Let's go!
So 5 simple ways to improve your health and wellness. I really want to share some tips today that you can immediately incorporate that are super easy, that don't necessarily cost you any money, and just little tactics that can really work. I think a huge part of improving health and wellness is looking beyond like the obvious. It's like eat healthy and exercise, like we all know that, but these are going to be like little things that you might not have thought about. So my first tip is to add greens or vegetables to almost every meal, the most amount of meals you can, because even though it might seem like a really basic tip, this can go so far. And I think that too many times we think about like being healthy as restricting and not eating too much sugar and not eating gluten or avoiding grains or whatever that might be, but adding is just as important because we need the nutrients and micronutrients and vitamins and minerals that beautiful plant-based food gives us. So one cool thing about spinach, I always like to kind of give this tip, is it just shrinks down so quickly. So if you are making a pasta dish, a rice dish, anything, just like literally the last 5 minutes, throw it onto the stove and mix it in. You probably won't even notice it if it's just a little, and this much will just shrink down to so much less. Another thing I like to do for people who really hate greens or vegetables, especially kids, is to chop it really small, like whether it's broccoli or spinach, like really, really, really small, even like zucchini, and just mix it in with like a rice or a quinoa or like a vegetable stir fry. So it's not like, they're eating big chunks of vegetables. They're just kind of eating it with their meal and they won't even notice. If you don't like vegetables, like let's say you really just can't add as many greens to your meals or you're on the go, a really great alternative could just be adding in a green powder. I do always prefer to have the more natural option. So, if you can get fresh vegetables and greens, that's better. But if you can't, there's absolutely nothing wrong with adding in a green supplement or a powder. There's so many different brands. I'll list a few of my favorites below, but I keep it in the fridge because it just stays better longer. And sometimes heat can make things not last as long. So I tend to keep my superfoods in the fridge, but that is tip number 1. So tip number 2 is taking an ice cold shower. So this is basically like creating your own little cryotherapy system at home. And I really like this tip because it doesn't cost any money. Like cryotherapy is absolutely incredible. We are in quarantine, so I don't know how many places are open right now, but if you can get yourself there and it's part of your budget, that's amazing. But if you can't, cold showers are such an easy way to incorporate so many different health benefits. So number 1, it's going to give you a boost of circulation with oxygenated blood, because when you're in like really cold temperatures, your body kind of goes into survival mode and all of your blood will rush to your vital organs. So it's going to go to like your heart and it's going to leave your extremities. This is why when people do cryotherapy, they often wear they always wear gloves, socks. You want to make sure your extremities stay warm because the blood is going to leave those areas. So then when you get back into warm temperature and all that blood now is rich in oxygen, it just kind of disperses back throughout your body and you immediately feel this like invigorating sense throughout your whole body. It's really nice. So that's one thing, that you're getting a boost of circulation. Number 2, when you have these cold temperatures, it causes vasoconstriction. So this means your vessels are going to constrict versus stay dilated. And this stimulates your lymphatic system to increase lymphatic flow. So there's your blood system, which has blood flow. That's just circulating in your body. And then there's also your lymphatic system. And this is how you excrete toxins from your body. Now, if you've ever had like a lymphatic massage, you'll notice it's like really like soft, long strokes on your body because it's just kind of helping boost it along. It's not like it has to be really tough or painful, but that's the point of it. And that's why they do this method. So when you're doing this, you're kind of helping yourself rid toxins. You can get rid of fluid buildup. This even helps cellulite, the appearance of cellulite, because a lot of times like a fluid accumulation can make cellulite look worse. So this is a cool little tip too. And honestly, I hate cold temperatures, hate cold weather. Like I always want it to be warm, and I've been doing the cold showers. It's really hard in the moment, but you feel so energized after. So it's also a really great natural energy boost. Tip number 3 is replacing certain items in your household. So let's start with the kitchen. Your kitchen sponge. How often do we replace it? I know I've definitely been guilty of sometimes having it on there for way too long and it gets dirty. So a kitchen sponge, there's actually studies that show it can host literally more bacteria than a toilet because, there's food particles on there. It's in a moist environment. Like, who knows if you like use it to even clean the counter, even if you don't, that's not even a fair example. It just sits there in a wet, moist environment with food particles, and it can just get really dirty. And if you think about it, you're using this sponge to clean your silverware and to clean plates and bowls that you eat out of. So you're really directly affected by this. And the bacteria found in these sponges has been known to actually cause infection. So it's one thing that you really want to replace often. I even think every month. I mean, sponges are something that are fairly inexpensive. So especially if you buy these in bulk, you can just keep them, under the sink, and I replace mine very often. So the next one is toothbrush, and it's kind of the same thing here. I think that a toothbrush, if I had to pick one, I would recommend replacing every month. A lot of professionals will say to replace it every 3 to 4 months, but if you can get just like a toothbrush at a drugstore and replace it often, there's so much bacteria that builds up on there. Sometimes food particles, if there's not all the toothpaste that comes off of it. And this is like really going directly into your mouth. And another thing about toothbrushes, which this is kind of gross, but if you keep it on the sink, like out, if you have a little toothbrush case and you don't close the toilet seat when you flush the toilet, a lot of those particles can actually get up into the air and onto your toothbrush. They're so small that of course you're not going to notice it, but they've done studies where they found a lot of not so nice things on your toothbrush. So just try to replace it every so often, especially if you're sick, if you get a cold, if you have the flu, any kind of virus. It's very important to swap out that toothbrush because sometimes those germs can still live on there. And lastly is a loofah. So I used to love loofahs and use them all the time, but I had learned, that they can host a lot of bacteria, mainly because you're keeping it in the shower. There's a lot of different folds on it and it doesn't get fully dry. So it's sitting again in this moist environment, and it's just harboring a lot of bacteria. And you're using this to clean yourself in the shower and to clean every part of your body, so it might not be a good idea to just be transferring this bacteria over and over again. So whether you want to use a loofah and replace it often, another option could be to just let it dry in more of like a clean space that doesn't hold moisture. So keeping it in the shower where there's a lot of steam is going to just kind of boost bacteria growth. So you could even take it out and maybe put it over the sink or dry it somewhere else. Seems like a lot of work, so I personally like to just use a washcloth. I just buy washcloths in bulk. I use a different one on my face literally every day. I never repeat it because I think it's such a great tip for acne. So same with your body, just wash them every week and just have a bunch on hand. It's a one-time investment. And I think it's important to think about these little things in terms of preventing cough, preventing cold, preventing viruses, just keeping our immunity strong. It's not always about what we're, being exposed to outside. Sometimes it's little things in our home. So just really good tips, especially going into fall. So my next tip is intermittent fasting, which I have talked about in my other videos. So I'll link them below here. I won't get too into it in this video, but intermittent fasting is just a really, really easy way to incorporate, getting healthier into your diet, because it doesn't matter what kind of diet you have. Anyone can do it. It doesn't matter if you are carb sensitive or if you're vegan or vegetarian or paleo. It's really just focusing on the timing of when you eat, and it gives your body time to repair. So when we're not always so focused on digestion, your body can go into repair mode, which is one of the biggest health benefits of intermittent fasting. Of course, check with your doctor before you do this, especially if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. It's not a great idea to go long, hours fasting. So definitely check with your doctor before trying it, but I'll link my video below in the description about intermittent fasting. The next tip is tongue scraping, and I really love this tip because it's so easy and it just benefits so many different things. So once you start tongue scraping, by the way, you'll never be able to stop. It's basically just getting, like a stainless steel, or you can get a silver or gold, like any kind of stainless steel tongue scrape, and just basically scraping your tongue in the morning and at night. Definitely do it in the morning before you eat or drink anything. There's a few different reasons why. Number one, when you have built up bacteria on your tongue, especially from overnight when you're sleeping, and then you go to drink water or eat, so if you don't brush your teeth and scrape your tongue first, you're gonna be ingesting this bacteria, and that's not a good thing. We wanna get this out of our bodies, because when you're sleeping, I've mentioned this before, you're actually in a natural state of detox and you're excreting things from your body. So if you're just gonna ingest that back, it's gonna kind of defeat the purpose. So that's one benefit of it. You also feel so much cleaner and more refreshed and more awake, and it's just, you're gonna love it when you do it. The next thing is when you have buildup of bacteria or a coated tongue, it can actually alter your taste. So sometimes you can't taste salt as much, you can't taste sweetness as much, and this might make you eat more. So in Ayurveda, they believe that when you scrape your tongue, this actually increases your senses and your taste, and it actually stops you from overeating, because When you can taste salt, you're not constantly adding more. When you can taste sweetness, you're not constantly adding like more sugar to your food. Another reason this is helpful is because when you start even chopping food, this actually begins the process of digestion. So basically like smelling food, seeing it, cooking it, all of this can, I mean, I'm sure you've salivated before smelling food or cutting it. That's part of the digestion process. And when you have a coated tongue and you don't like properly taste it and you don't have those proper like sensory signals, this can also alter your digestion. So as you can see, it's such an easy remedy to do that will just, improve your health in numerous ways. And lastly, as a little bonus tip for improving your health and wellness, I cannot stress enough how important it is to reduce your stress. I didn't want to include this as a tip on here because I really wanted to get into specifics, and I find that stress reduction looks different for everybody. What stresses out one person might not stress out another, or maybe, getting more sleep might not be realistic in your life right now. Let's say you're a new mom and it's like impossible to sleep more. I think you have to be realistic to where you are in life. But however you can reduce stress, it is so important for your mental health, your physical health, and it actually impacts everything. It can impact your immunity, your digestion, your reproductive health, numerous things. So I actually have a video that I'll be sharing next week on how to reduce stress and anxiety and some really good tactful tips that I'll share with you guys, but I just wanted to leave you with that to close out the video. So I hope you guys enjoy these easy little tips that again don't cost anything and will really go a long way. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Let's go.